Here we are, mid-June, enjoying summertime. Boy, I hope it's been good for you. Kids are out. It's kind of like the peak of summer, and the heat is going here in Florida. So turn on the AC and listen up. We've got a really good episode for you today. It's a personal one for me. What do you do when you make a bad decision? How do you walk it back? Even if your motive was right and you were pure in heart and you're like, I've made a bad call here. What do I do about this? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today on Rainer on Leadership. Thanks for tuning in. And we certainly want to thank our sponsor, Tyndale. As we've been talking about, and if you've been listening to episodes consecutively, then you know where we're going with this. But we want to mention it again because it's such a great resource. The Filament Bible Collection. This is your gateway to a deeper and more enriching Bible study experience. Your people will love this. If you're a pastor or church leader and you're listening to this, you need to direct your people to this Bible collection. It is absolutely amazing what it has. You just scan the page number right at the top of the page, and it pulls up all of these resources about whatever text is there. And, you've got...
It is amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It's so smooth. It's so smooth. Yeah. It makes studying the Bible enjoyable. Like, I want to read to the next page so I can study more. Like, so, that's, if you want to get your people reading the Bible, this is an excellent way to do it.
Absolutely.
Hundreds of thousands of devotionals and infographics and hundreds of videos, over 25,000 study notes. This is really an amazing tool. So filamentbibles.com is where you can go to get it. We've got a link in the show notes as well, where you can check out the Bible collection. Got an assortment of Bibles that are all filament enabled. So all that you do is get the Bible, get the app, and you're ready to go. So thank you, Tyndale,
and the app is
resource.
And the app is free, in case I'm wondering.
Yeah, that's a good point. The app is free. That's an assumption I made that maybe others wouldn't have. So buy the Bible, get the app. App is free, and you are good to go. All right, Dad. I know you've never needed to walk back a decision.
What week is it?
Yeah, yeah. So, this is one for me as a pastor. I make a lot of decisions on behalf of my church, and even when I feel like I'm being Spirit led, I'm doing the right thing, my motive is pure, I still make a call that later on I'm like, yeah, I don't know that was God's will. You see it after the fact, and this will happen. I mean, this happens to everybody. You can't be a perfect leader. You're not going to make perfect decisions. How do you walk it back? What do you do when you realize I'm going down the wrong road, and maybe I've made a decision on behalf of the church, and I've got to walk it back? How do you do that, Dad? I've got an example in my brain.
I will wait on your example, but because I have one or two. But I just got to say, Four Seasons, they just come to mind with this particular topic. Their song was Working My Way Back. I'm working my way back to you, girl. And it was about making a bad decision and leaving a girl, and now he's trying to work his way back to her. So there's similarities there. That's my 60s trivia, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. Or were you asking me something? I'm sorry.
No, I just let you sing 60 songs on your radio show. That's why people tune in. That's why everyone's listening. So we have to let you do that.
Yes, absolutely.
So let me give you an example that's a bit absurd, but it really happened. And after I tell the story, hopefully you'll understand why I did what I did. So this was at First Baptist Church Murray. We had stained glass. Everyone thought it was historical stained glass. It wasn't. That's a whole nother, it wasn't. I actually called the company that made the stained glass was still in existence, believe it or not. And I asked them, I said, what's the significance of this stained glass? They said, absolutely nothing. They were still firing in the same kilns. Like, we could reproduce it for you. There's nothing historical about this stained glass at all. There's nothing special about this stained glass at all. This is our standard stained glass. But everyone thought, because it's our stained glass, that it was, historically significant. And because we were on the National Register of Historic Places, guess what? All of the agencies that control what we can do to our building also thought that it was historical, even though it wasn't. So we had to do something about this stained glass. And I thought it would be a brilliant idea to present two options to the church so that they can vote on them as to what style of new stained glass that we were going to put in. And Dad, do you know what happens when you give a church an option like that? You know
You
what
you
happens?
usually have a fight over the
They
options.
fought over it. And I'm like, no, 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 no. No, I just wanted it to be a fun exercise. Do you want blue or green? And all of a sudden, it was team blue and it was team green. And I thought, what have I done? This is not a good situation. But then guess what happened?
What?
The local architectural review board, which controls decisions, decided that it was going to be neither blue nor green, that we had to do it their way. So the architectural review board saved my behind, because now the church was mad at the government for telling them what to
There
do.
you
So it got
go.
me out of it.
Wow. I have only vague memories of that. Uh, but yeah,
I
I
was
do have some.
actually doing national news interviews over this, because it became a church first state issue on what we are allowed to do, what we are not allowed to do, who controls the building. It got heated. Thankfully, no one remembers the team blue, team green, and everyone remembers the government trying to tell us what we could do or couldn't do with our own facility. So
Mm,
um, that one I would have loved to have walked back and redone. My motives were pure. I wanted to do the right thing, but it became a mess. So,
You
what do
want
you
to
do
hear
when you
mine?
get in?
Mine quickly. You want to hear mine quickly?
Oh yeah, I didn't know if you were going to say one or not.
Yeah. I was a pastor in Birmingham, and a Methodist church was had outgrown their facility. It would hold about 300, so it was a nice sized facility, and it was beautiful in a beautiful area of south of Hoover, in that area. For those of you who know Birmingham, and the appraised value was, gosh, it was cheap back then, about 3 million for the property and the building. And the pastor said, "If you will buy it for 1 million, you can have it." I said, "Man, this is great," because I've been looking for our South Campus and was hoping that that would happen. I just didn't realize that my congregation had never thought of multiple campuses, and trying to present that to them in 1992 was an awful decision. It wasn't that I divided the church. It's just the church was pretty united against me. So, and in ways that there was, and I had to walk back. I couldn't. My mind could not fathom that you thought that there's only one form of church where you have one campus. I mean, that's the New Testament model, just one campus. I know that there's the church at Corinth and the church at Philippi, etc. But I thought surely they'd be open to this, and this would be a great opportunity. We were landlocked too, so I had to walk that one back. It's not on the table anymore.
Yeah. So the first thing that I'll say is give yourself some grace. I mean, no leader gets every decision right. And if you are caught in a dilemma, even one of your own making, just know that you're the decision maker in many ways. And I know there's different types of church government, and pastors don't get to make all the decisions, but you're the one leading. And if you're the lead pastor, especially, you can't bat 1,000. No leader can. So step one in this process is, you know what? Everyone's going to make a bad call from time to time. I'm just going to give myself some grace in this situation. A one-off bad decision does not mean you're a bad pastor. Just because you made a bad call at one time does not mean you're a bad pastor. Now, maybe some of you are in churches where the congregation regularly reminds you that you're a bad pastor because you made that one bad call. I guess some people can be in those situations. But
Exactly.
just because you make a bad decision doesn't mean you're a bad pastor. You're not going to make the best calls all the time. No one can. And man, I'll just say this, and I mentioned this in a previous episode. The will of God is not always easy to discern. There are people out there, and I won't name names, who just basically talk about the will of God as if it's so clear all the time. And if you don't know the will of God, are you in a good place spiritually? And I'll just say there are times when the will of God is difficult to know. I made a transition. I mentioned this in a previous episode, but I made a move from one church to another. To this day, I'm like, I don't know that was God's will. I was pure and genuine in my motive, but looking back, I'm like, I don't know. And Dad, you talked about Azalea and your move away from Azalea. And was that really God's will? To this day, for me, I don't know. If someone said, "Were you within the will of God?" I'd say, "I just don't know," and I don't know that I ever will know until I get to heaven. So, I'd also say
I
that when you're making calls, it can just be tough to know what God's will really is.
I don't know why I'm choosing to read the book of Job in my devotional time each morning. It's not that I'm a suffering person, but I'm just reading the book of Job. Here's one, as many times as I've read the book of Job, here's one thing that's coming through clearly on this. Job is very clear. You cannot always know the mind of God. He couldn't figure out what was going on during his suffering. And we usually talk about theodicy and suffering and those types of things. What is coming just crystal clear this time, you really don't always know the mind of God, because if you did know the mind of God, you would be God. And so you can't know the perfect will all the time.
That's a good point. The other thing that I'll say is that if you take risks, the the more risks you take, the likelier you are to get some things wrong. So
Oh, you
if
said that yesterday, Sam.
I did,
Yeah,
did
we were
I?
talking about some decisions that I couldn't recall who made what, because sometimes we talk about them and it just feels like one. And you said, "Well, I got to own these. I've made these. I made some bad decisions here." And I came back to you. I said, "No, you took some risk. And if we're not having some failures or some things that don't come out perfectly, that means we're being too conservative." So I said, "No, you're not going to be penalized." You remember that conversation now?
I
Is it
do
coming
now.
back to
Yeah.
you?
Now that you bring it up,
I
certainly.
said, "You're not going to be penalized for taking risk." I wouldn't rather have someone that has failures from time to time than, and I don't consider what you did failure, but failures from time to time, than someone that is just scared to take risk.
Well, that's certainly the case, and hopefully by the time this airs, we'll have fixed all these problems that we created. No, there are some of the decisions that we made, because you
And
were
I'm
involved in this
working.
too. You were involved in this
No,
too. I
no,
wasn't
no. I
alone.
had nothing to do with it. I was focusing on your errors. But like I
But
said, sometimes our decisions blend together, and it's hard to tell who said what.
it's certainly the case. But if you're in a church and you try something unique, you try something different, you try something bold, you try something you've never done before, and that's what what does it mean to take a risk in a church? That's a lot of times that's what it means to take a risk. You just don't. This is not a ready-made success, but we're going to try it anyway. Well, you're going to get some things wrong, and that's okay. It's good to take calculated risks, and
Absolutely.
you just have to own it when you get it wrong and move on. But I'd also say this. So let's say you made a decision, you need to walk it back, you're in a bit of a dilemma, but pull back and just, okay, what is the impact? What is this really going to impact? You do not need to tell everyone in the church unless it affects everyone. You don't, people talk about just being transparent and, I want to be transparent with all my flaws and that's great. And you
No, it's
should
not.
be,
No, you
but
shouldn't.
sometimes people, what? Not everyone needs to know everything, particularly if it doesn't
Exactly.
impact them. If you made
Exactly.
a call that only impacts your finance committee, or if you made a call that only impacts your personnel committee, well, that's you just start with them. Well, only the elders. This really only affects them. Okay, well, tell them. You don't need to tell the whole church. Everyone starts. It's weird when you're like, well, let me talk about a mistake I made. It doesn't really impact any of you. Doesn't None of you would ever have even noticed. It was a poor leadership decision on my part. Well, everyone's gonna go, why are you telling us? We don't need to know this. Um, but if it does affect everyone, and if it is felt by a lot of people, then you might need to make a public statement. But I would just say, hey, be transparent, be genuine, but not everybody needs to know everything. You don't need to confess every bad decision you've ever made to your entire church. That's just odd and weird.
And then there are occasions that you make these mistakes, and on occasion, you need to apologize. I've done
Yeah.
that more than one time from the pulpit. I've done that in other leadership contexts where apologies are necessary.
Hey, we did a consultation in Maine. Now, this was many, many years ago. And before we even put together the report, we told the pastor, like, listen, you've made some bad calls here. You're a good guy, but you've made enough bad calls to where you need to get in front of your whole congregation and because they all know it. They're all feeling it, and just apologize. And he did that. He did that the very. This is one of our more successful consultations. He did exactly what we told him to do. He apologized, but he didn't sulk. He didn't get up there and say, "Oh, woe is me." He just said, "Guys, got this wrong. I'm going to admit it, and here's the solution." And it worked wonders in that. It was so refreshing to them. They're like, "Okay, thank you. Yes, we know you made a bad call. we all feel it, but thank you for apologizing, and thank you for having a path forward. Let's go do it."
That's a
And I
long
think a
time
lot of
ago.
churches are like that.
I can remember this because we're right on the water. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Great location. I don't want to reveal too much more
Yeah,
because I don't want
I'm
to give
not going
away
to say
that.
the city, but there's a lot of places that are right on the water, both interior and on the coastline. So we won't say anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and then learn from your mistakes. If you've made a bad call, don't do it again. If you have a posture of learning over time with experience, you're going to make fewer bad decisions that have less of an impact. But you only get there if you are learning. And then I'll also say, just stay positive. Stay positive. Keep leading. People will have a string of bad calls. It's kind of like it's baseball season, so I'll use a baseball analogy. Every batter, even the best batters, go through a slump, right? That's just inevitable. This by just statistics, you're going to have a part of the season where you just don't do as well. Leadership's kind of the same way. You're going to go through a slump. Well, when you get in a slump, you can't just give up. You can't sulk. You can't you've got to stay positive. You've got to keep leading. This is the thing about leading. You have to keep leading. You don't get to give up leading when you're in a place of making some bad calls. I've been there. I've been in a leadership slump. I've made a string of bad calls before for whatever reason. They just all came back to back to back, and you can't give up. That's when you
Uh,
get into a lot of trouble.
so I've got a story.
All right.
Everybody looks forward to my stories, especially if they're not 60 songs. Um, Probably, certainly top 3 or 4 greatest football coaches of all time. Nick Saban just retired from Alabama. He tells the story of his first year at Alabama. Uh, he listed 5 terrible decisions he made in a game his first season, and he lost to Louisiana Monroe. No, not Louisiana State, Louisiana Monroe. And he goes through all of those things. He ended up having a 7-6 season, and after that, it was great. But he talked about having to get up and just face the world the next day and move forward. And so he goes to a service station, he pumps his gas, and he goes in, and he walks in, and somebody sees a national championship ring on his fingers from LSU when he was head coach there. He said, "Oh, so you got a national championship? Where's that from?" "LSU." "Yeah." And he said, "Well, hope Alabama can get back to winning national championships, but we're not going to ever do it with that Saban guy still coaching." He didn't know it was Saban, obviously. So he said he just had to get up and start over again. That's my
Yeah, and
story.
that's all with some decisions, that's all you can do. And some decisions can't be undone. You just got to move forward the best you can. In the case of Saban, to use the same example, he couldn't undo it. You
Right.
lost. So,
Exactly.
you don't get to go back and change the record. Although some leaders do try to do that. They are people who try to revise history.
Yes.
There's some leaders who are guilty of that. Don't be that person.
It doesn't turn out well most of the time.
Yeah, it usually
All
doesn't
the
at
time
all.
you end up being exposed at some point.
Well, and in today's everything documented social media world, everything recorded, yeah, you're not likely to be able to pull the wool over someone's eyes. But yeah, you're going to make some calls that don't work out, and you're going to make some decisions that were bad decisions that can't be undone. You just got to move forward the best you can. We've all had to do it. Dad, you've had to do it. I've had to do it. Sometimes you got to walk back a bad decision, and you realize, you know what? God was not in this. Thought he was, but we got to do something else. We've all been there, and hopefully this was helpful. But you know who else is very helpful to churches, and it's a good decision, not a bad decision.
Well, it is a very good decision if you go to Upward Sports and you use them. Listen, folks, this is the essence of it all. If you want to be a great commission church, there are different ways you can do it, but one of the most effective ways is through sports, especially in America. Don't whine about the sports leagues. Don't whine about the travel squads. Instead, bring sports to your church. And Upward does that. They can take any church, whether you have a gym, a parking lot, or a field. They can take any church and they can make you a sports league. They can make you a sports team. They can do all, and you can reach your community with this so effectively. It is a great ministry, a great service to the kingdom, and the best in the world is Upward Sports, and they are the largest Christian youth sports organization in the world. Big is not always better, but big indicates how many churches have used them in this case and how effective they are. They've been around quite a while. Hey, listen, it's time to start planning for your winter sports league now. So get to it. Start planning it. Get Upward to help you. Tell them Church Answer sent you, or go to the show notes and look at the link there, upward.org/church answers. Get ready and listen. It's not going to last much longer, but they still have the $500 grant that is available for each and every one of you who now gives them a call and tells them Church Answer sent you. You will be so incredibly glad you did. And look, before I go, don't forget about the Everything Church Resources directory. Upward's listed in there, and there's a good reason that Upward is in there, because they are one of the best. But if you need any church resource, go to our show notes, download it. It's free. It's huge. But you say, where can I find? There it is. Where can I find for my church? There it is. All of those are great. And to all of you who are watching us on YouTube, thank you for doing so. Subscribe. We want to add subscribers because this is a free ministry and we can get the word out more. Or give us a thumbs up that you like us. Or if you're a favorite podcasting app, give us a rating, a review. Always, thank you for being a part of Rainer and Leadership. On behalf of Sam Rainer, I'm Thom Rainer, and we'll see you in the next episode.